It's a new year, but same spouse. So, how can you make your marriage the best it can be in the new year? Well, with intentionality, you can break out of the habits that are not serving your marriage well and build in new ones that work better. Listen today for the tips and tools you need to build intentional rhythms for a stronger marriage this year. And make sure you listen through the end of the episode because we've got some awesome resources for exactly that we want to let you know about. So listen all the way through and we'll get you hooked up with all of those links, all those resources. So, Dr. Kim, in the new year, what are some signs that a couple needs a reset for their marriage?
Well, I think there's a lot of signs, and I think in some ways, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that really stand out, but I think we all kind of need that every year. Nancy and I,
Mm,
every year we kind of sit down and think, okay, what we did last year, what we've done different, what do we want to accomplish by this time next year, and what do we have to do to get there? So I think it's a good thing for all of us. But
mm,
if these things are going on, I think it really should be a red flag for you. We talk a lot about communication. So if you're having communication breakdowns, I think that's
mhm,
a red flag. If you get to where all you're talking about are just logistics and picking up the kids and stuff like that, and if you're finding yourself avoiding things because you're afraid it might bring conflict because you haven't
mm,
connected there, or you're just living those lives, you're right beside each other, but there's no meaningful interaction. And so I think a communication breakdown or lack of it would be a red flag.
mhm,
Emotional distance, maybe there's less physical affection, maybe less intimacy. You're feeling more like roommates than you
mm,
really are spouses, and you're not taking the time. You just don't ever share your personal thoughts and your feelings with each other. So emotional
mm,
distance, I think, would be when, if you're feeling that, taking each other for granted. And I think we can all do that at times, but we're just not giving the effort in the marriage that we were at one time. We're not showing appreciation to each other. We're not
mm,
really acknowledging each other, and we're not celebrating the special moments in life together. It's like things that maybe we would have celebrated, but we just kind of just don't want to do that
mm,
this year. Something like that. If you've got unresolved conflicts that keep coming up and up and up, so you keep having these same arguments on a repeated basis, if you're sweeping issues under the rug so you'd have to
mm,
deal with it, if resentments are building, then I think that's a red flag that you've got to figure out these conflicts. You've got to learn to resolve conflicts this year.
mm,
Not doing shared activities together. We talk about how important it is to have fun together and do those kind of things. So you're not really sharing any hobbies or interests. You're not, most
mm,
of the free time you have, you spend separately instead of saying, what can we do together? And when
mm,
you are together, it's just not the quality that maybe you want that in your marriage. And the
mhm,
last one, are you seeing some negative patterns? Are you really
mm,
criticizing each other a lot, and that's not balanced with a lot of positive things? Are you are defensive responses? Is that kind of the norm for you guys in your marriage?
mm,
Sarcasm, contempt, all those things are that part of communication. So when a communication breaks down, emotional distance, taking each other for granted, recurring unresolved conflicts, loss of shared activities, and negative patterns. If any of those are popping up, then I think, okay, we probably need a reset. And then you can decide, how do we address that? Do we get counseling? Do we
mhm,
do a course together, like on Awesome Marriage? Do we talk to a mentor couple that we really respect? But
mhm,
don't just see those red flags and ignore them. New
mm,
year, get on top of it.
mhm. Yeah, wow, that's a pretty great list, pretty comprehensive. And I think what you said when you kicked off the episode that you kind of feel like this is something we need to do every year. And I feel
Yeah,
like out of that list, we probably all can see something there where we could, you
absolutely.
know, because we're not meant to be stagnant. Like you always say, marriage is never just standing still. It's growing or it's falling, a little bit behind. So if we're intentional in the new year, we can really take the steps to close the gap between what we have and what we want to have in our marriage, which is really hopeful and encouraging.
Yeah, and a couple of times went there and they had picked one thing. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it's communication they work on for a year, but at the end of the year, they had really improved their communication, but
Hmm.
they'd kind of let intimacy dropped a little
Mm,
bit. So then, okay,
mhm,
we're going to work on intimacy next year, and we're going to keep doing the things we're doing in communication. And
mhm.
you just kind of keep building on that, because you're not going to solve all these things overnight.
Right.
You want to get into a habit that makes these things part of your lifestyle without even thinking about it. That you
Mhm,
don't, man, if we're lacking affection or intimacy, we get on top of it right then and we talk about those kind of things. And so,
mhm,
yeah, you want to kind of continue to build, because you're never
mhm.
going to get to a point and coast. If you do, you're going to be in trouble. You just don't
Right,
coast in
right.
a marriage. You just don't.
Yeah. No, you don't. And I would say you gave a lot to think about in that list. Can you give just a little bit of hope before we move on? What if a couple hears
Sure.
themselves in all those things and they're thinking we've got red flags everywhere. Where do we start?
Well, the good thing
What do
is
you say?
everything is fixable.
Yeah.
And the worst thing you can do is see those red flags and do nothing. And
Mhm.
so, okay, maybe you did see yourself on all that. Maybe get so you sit down and you say, okay, which let's rate these. What are we doing?
Mhm.
What's communication? Well,
Mhm.
we're about an 8 there. We're doing pretty good. Emotional distance, man, we're not doing good. We're probably a 2 there.
Mhm.
Kind of go
Mhm.
through the list and then pick your twos or the ones that you're low on. And if they're
Mhm.
all, just flip a coin because it's going to
Mhm.
help you no matter which one you pick. But
Mhm.
yes, there's always hope, and it's
Mhm.
just deciding this year we're going to be more intentional about our marriage. We're
Mhm.
going to spend
Mhm.
the time that we need to with the kids. We're going to do all those things, but we've got to be intentional about our marriage because we want to model marriage well for our kids. And we want our marriage to be really strong when the last one leaves home so we can really
Mhm.
enjoy those empty nest years. So
Yeah.
it's just saying, to me, it would be maybe a red flag makes it sound bad. It would be like, okay, this is a sign of something we need to work on. This
Yeah.
is where we need what we need to do to make our marriage better. And if you get on it and you work on it together,
Mhm.
you'll get
Yeah.
you can do those.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Yeah. So just pick one. Just start somewhere. Okay, so let's move into like kind of this process, how it's looked for you and Nancy. Have you ever seen that you need a reset? What did it look like and how did you handle it?
Well, I think that, I kind of said that we kind of were aware of kind of having that every year, just, and it
Mhm.
was more of a evaluation. Okay, well, we can work on the next year. So that in some ways, that definitely is a reset. I think when we
Mhm.
were raising kids. That was probably the time that we could get into things where maybe we almost hit all of those things. We didn't
Mm.
communicate
Mhm.
as well. We're so busy with kids. We just didn't take time for emotional connection. You're just doing logistics. So you take each other for granted.
Yeah.
I think we were ignoring conflict. I think
Mhm.
it was so easy with the busyness to not solve things that needed to be resolved or solved. And so
Mhm.
that those seasons like that, those years when there was all that stuff going on, plus our home became this landing spot, which we wanted for all of our kids' friends.
Mhm.
And so,
Mhm.
kids to be there and stuff like that. So there were, Nancy loved having them there. I loved having them there. She was fixing things for them to eat, getting stuff
Mhm.
out, those kind of things. I was having fun with them. So we were doing a lot of good things, but we weren't
Mhm.
being intentional about time together. And when that happened, we got disconnected. When we got disconnected, still when it happens today, we get short with each other. There's less
Mhm.
intimacy,
Mhm.
and we don't really resolve issues because we didn't make the time to do it. We were doing a lot together, but
Mhm.
we weren't connected. And that was the key for us. How do we I think at those times, okay, what do we need to do to make sure we're connected this next year? Because
Mhm.
we can't let this go on like this another year, or we may forget your name, or something
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
So I think the first time we went the counseling was about that time. And so he really helped us get on track.
Mhm.
First time we went that, and that was probably first time we went to counseling was before kids. And so this would have been
Mm.
another where we had a reset. We just didn't resolve issues well, all those kind of things. And so
Mhm.
we went to counseling. He suggested some things, and then we just began to implement those things. And I think we learned, even though we struggled years with kids, how important it was. So even though I think one thing is good for us, even though we might end a year unconnected, we knew we were unconnected and we knew we
Mm.
needed to do something about it. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of times couples just don't feel like they've got the energy to do anything about it.
Mhm.
And so if you wait another year, you're really going to be unconnected. And so
Yeah.
you want to get on them quickly.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And I think, you mentioned counseling as your first step. That was one thing that we did too when getting bogged down in the kids' years. I feel like that it really was our story as well because we didn't do a good job of resolving conflict before kids, but when we started adding them in, it's like we're just juggling. We're juggling and
Yeah.
nothing's ever like really getting resolved. We're just kind of making it through. And so having going to counseling, it felt like at first we're digging like to get to the bottom of the pile. Like we've got this pile of things that need to resolve. It's like how long we have to dig. But what we learned quickly was that if you get a couple of skills to stop the really bad habits you're in, then it really helps you to stop adding on to the pile. So
Hmm.
maybe it still takes a little time to resolve these issues you've never resolved, but at the same time, you're not still collecting more junk to resolve because you're
Yeah.
stopping the bad habits. You're stopping those things that you've been doing to really get at each other. And so it was really great just to see the first time we saw, oh my gosh, we learned a skill, we applied it, and we did it. We felt so proud. Our counselor celebrated with us.
Yeah.
It was like, this is a major win. Not that we got to the bottom of the pile, but that we just stopped adding onto it. It was
Yes.
like, wow, we can do something here.
No, that makes so much sense. And it's, that I think that's such, I tell couples all the time, if, and when I'm doing premarital, I said, come in at least once a year for a checkup.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just so if there's something going on, we can get on top of it. And I've got
Yeah.
couples that do that, and I've got couples that don't, and come in
Mhm.
6 years later when they should have come in after that first year. I had
Mhm.
a couple I thought of as you were talking. They were in one of my prep for marriage classes, the ones where I did a 9 week deal, and we met an hour and a half for 9 weeks. I mean, this couple was the star
Mhm.
couple in this deal. I mean, they were like, oh my gosh, they had this perfect marriage. And so I kept up with them, and they did great, and they had so much fun together. They loved the Lord together, did everything right. And so I kind of, lost a little bit of track of them, and they made an appointment. Well, by this time they had 2 kids,
Mhm.
and they just came in and sat on the couch, and they said, what happened to us? And it
Mhm.
was just the things we're talking about, the busyness of life, having 2 kids, being more tired, all of those things that were beginning, and they didn't make the time to do the things that had made their marriage so successful at that point. And I think,
Mhm.
like you said, we can all fall into those patterns.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Just to begin to make this a little more tangible for our listeners. So, we've talked about a lot of reasons to get a reset. So, if they want to make a reset, if they start the year off knowing there's some things they want to change, but they're not sure what to do, what should they do first?
Christian counseling is always a good step.
Mhm.
I mean, I think one, you say, well, it costs money. I agree. But if you sometimes I can meet with a couple, maybe even just a couple of times, and just kind of like you're saying, we find some things, and if the couple's motivated and does those things, they'll get back on the right track. And so
Mhm.
then you can kind of maybe then you start looking more at Awesome Marriage resources, or hey,
Mhm.
let's take one of Awesome Marriage courses together.
Mhm.
But counseling, I think, helps you get kind of a roadmap to go to.
Mhm.
I think if you're sometimes it's really important to identify what are our issues.
Mhm.
Why are we not as close as we were a year ago? So
Mhm.
put those things in there. And a lot of it may just be busyness. And so then
Yeah.
you look at it, is it okay if the kids are in, we have 4 kids and they're all in 4 activities a week? Yeah, probably not.
Mhm.
That's taking a toll on you. Somebody's living in the car the whole time or the
Yeah.
minivan the
Yeah.
whole time.
Mhm.
So do we need do some things different? We quit doing our date nights. I see a
Mm.
lot of couples that do that, and it's
Mhm.
amazing when they go back to having a date night or a date lunch
Mhm.
every week.
Mhm.
It's like, oh my gosh, I remember what it used to be
Yeah.
like with you.
Yeah.
Identify the issue. I think the other thing is get back to being that team. We talk about
Mm.
a lot, and when you do that, then you can do that thing that we talk about of solving problems where you're standing together as a team and you're looking at the problem together and you're saying, how should this be solved? Instead
Mhm.
of, I'm doing it my way and Nancy's doing her way, and we don't
Mhm.
even connect on how we're solving that problem.
Yeah.
So first steps would be, one, just acknowledge that there's an issue.
Mhm.
You can counseling, you can do awesome marriage resources, you can take a course, and what would it take for us to be on the same page? And by that, you don't have to agree on everything, but you got to be willing to compromise whatever
Yeah.
comes up. You've got to be
Yeah.
willing to give and take. That's being a team. Team doesn't have to be that you're not. I don't want you to be clones of each other,
Right.
but I want
Right.
you to see together because each of you bring value. And sometimes we would have a problem, and I'd think I had it solved, or in my mind I did, and then I'd
Mhm.
listen to what Nancy's solution was, and I think that makes kind of sense. In fact, I think we
Yeah.
can use a little bit of both of these, maybe,
Yeah.
or maybe hers
Mhm.
is better, and I just say you knock this out of the park,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we'll go with that. So I think those are. It's just taking that step. It's just
Yeah.
acknowledging we need to do something different and take a step. Decide
Mhm.
together what you're going to do. And
Yeah.
I left out probably the most important thing. Start praying about it. That's God's
Yeah.
guidance. God help
Mhm.
us, remind us to connect, remind us to be kind to each other again, remind us to do those things that we used to do so well,
Mhm.
but we've kind of let it go by the wayside. And you'll
Mhm.
see God in the middle of it too.
Yeah. No, that's so true. No, that's really true. And I've seen that happen so many times in our marriage, things that were just kind of felt stuck on, and then praying about it, you're like, oh, why didn't I do that sooner?
I know. It's
Um,
amazing, and usually it's something simple,
yes,
you
yes, it
know?
really is.
It's
I
not
know.
like God's gonna have you fly around the world or something, it's like, no, it's gonna be
Right.
something pretty simple.
Yeah, he is for our marriage. He's
Yes.
for us. And so when we invite him into the process, it really changes things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I've got, I mean, great resources. I mean, Awesome Marriage, if you're listening and you don't know about the resources we have, I mean, you have got to check out the website. We've got so many things we've created just to help your marriage. And if you're listening, you might not have checked out the website. You might not have seen all the things we have to offer. So make sure you go to awesomemarriage.com/resources today. We've got so many things that are going to help your marriage. The first one I think of is just the free weekly marriage multiplier email that Dr. Kim writes. 4 quick, tangible things in one weekly email that are going to get you working intentionally on your marriage. And then, if you do want to take a course, which Dr. Kim mentioned, you are in luck because right now we're running a flash sale, $100 off any of the courses of your choice. So you'll hear about that in the ad in today's episode, but also find the links in the show notes because that's an incredible deal if you're ready to get some traction on reshaping and helping your marriage this year. So those are bonus. Those are not even the things I was going to mention at the end of the episode. Just little bonuses we have because I don't know how often, you know, who else knows how much we have to offer. We've got a ton. So I want to make sure
Yeah,
you're aware of that.
I agree. I would just take 10 minutes and go to
Mhm.
awesomemarriage.com, kind of
Mhm.
look around, see, pick a resource that you think this would be fun or good for us to work on.
Yeah.
Go to Awesome Marriage University. You can go straight there, awesomemarriageuniversity.com, I think.
I
Yeah.
would think so. Make sure we
Yep.
check that in the show notes.
And all the courses are there, or you can also go through the website and drop down on resources. Go to Awesome
Yeah.
Marriage University. Got some great courses there. Some of them are for definitely if you're really struggling in a marriage.
Mhm.
Some of them are just to build your marriage. And
Mhm.
so looks there. There's a lot of resources that help. I use the resources all the time in
Mhm.
counseling couples because they're so good.
Yeah. And can you tell we have a lot of fun making these too? We really enjoy it. We have a great
Yes.
time creating this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We got a great team that creates that.
Yeah. So, okay, so those are some great steps to start with. What about if a couple get started, but they really are afraid they're going to fall back in the same patterns? They're just so used to their old habits. What can they do to make sure they don't fall into those patterns again?
I think a couple things. One, I think if you're afraid you might fall back, you're kind of hyper vigilant, and that's probably good
Mm. Hmm.
because you're aware of it. But to fall back, sometimes it does take time to break some
Mm.
of those old habits, even though you
Hmm.
don't know they don't work. They're just kind of comfortable because you've been
Hmm.
doing them so long.
Hmm.
So I think there's got to be accountability. I would suggest that the husband and wife each have an accountability partner,
Hmm.
someone. It could be a couple that also mentors you, but someone that can say, okay, you guys were working on that communication thing and you were going to do this and this. How'd you do on that this week?
Hmm.
Just somebody. And I think it's a lot of times counseling, a lot of it after we kind of get on a track is
Hmm.
accountability and
Hmm.
refinement. So they come in and they know they're going to be coming in. So they do the things that
Yeah.
we've talked about doing. And then if they're having struggles in some area, then I can help them refine that. So
Hmm.
the accountability, mentor couple, counselor, and then weekly checkup. You can use our weekly
Hmm.
checkup guide that we have at
Hmm.
Awesome Marriage, but just kind of evaluate every week. That is really helpful
Yeah.
because time goes quick. And
Yeah.
so if maybe you do fall back in one area that week, well,
Hmm.
if you're on Sunday afternoon, if you're sitting down and doing your checkup and evaluating, then you can say, we need to get back on track on this.
Hmm.
So I think it just falls back in doing some things intentionally to build some accountability in that are going to help you stay on the new patterns and
Yeah.
not fall back or stay when you fall back to the old patterns.
Yes, that's so good. Yeah, it's just reshaping that habit, rebuilding.
Yep.
Yeah. So, what marriage rhythms or habits help you and Nancy keep your marriage strong?
Communication,
Mhm.
communication,
Mhm.
communication. I mean, that has been a mantra for us ever since we went through a lot of our early struggles that we knew
Mm.
we had to communicate. And that's why we have built in time every day to just touch base with each other, just to
Mm.
communicate. Some days I think when you build that in, most days it's probably just sharing your day, or maybe, hey, I saw this today. I think God was working in this person's life, or stuff like that.
Mhm.
But you've got that set in, and if something comes up, then you say, hey, well, I really need to talk about this. I'm so glad we've got this 15 minutes set aside like we
Mm.
do every day. So
Mhm.
communication, prayer, I think has been the greatest thing in our marriage. I've said that many times because we've prayed consistently our whole marriage, involving it just helps. One, God, like you said, loves marriage, wants our marriage to be good, wants
Mhm.
to be involved. And so it's just consciously inviting him into that, because he didn't make us robots. He's going to make you do something. He's going to give
Mhm.
you a choice. But when you invite him in, he is all in, and he's going to
Yeah.
do everything. I think doing YouVersion plans
Mhm.
together has been helpful, because we read through the Bible together every year.
Mhm.
We do some other YouVersion plans. We've done a lot of stuff with Bible Project because we love what they do.
Mhm.
But doing something, and we always have done that at bedtime. And it's not
Mm.
long, maybe it takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It depends on what it is.
Mhm.
But it's just a way to connect and talk about something. I love the way the Bible Project breaks down the different books of the Bible. And I've learned,
Mhm.
I went to seminary. I've learned
Mhm.
every video from them about every book in the Bible, things that I never even thought of. So those were really
Mm.
good. And then making sure that we have time for each other every day, like that
Mhm.
time. It's so much easier now with being empty nest, definitely, because we
Mhm.
can hang out more. We can, if Nancy's cooking dinner, she doesn't have little people around all the time. I can sit at the counter and we can talk while she's doing that. So we look for
Mhm.
opportunities.
Mhm.
One of the things in one of the books I talk about touch points, and it's
Mhm.
looking for those things. What are those opportunities that you can just be together? We
Mhm.
used to, I think I've used this before, but we used to, on Saturday morning, we run errands, but we run them separate so we get it done quick. Well, we
Mhm.
changed that. We do errands
Mhm.
together, and it takes us longer, but
Mhm.
we may stop and have lunch, or we may
Mhm.
get coffee or something like that. And it keeps us doing that together. And yeah, maybe it takes us an extra 30 minutes or an hour, but we've
Mhm.
had that time together. And so I think that's really important. Dates, having fun, try new things, anything that's going to connect you. We love to go exploring. We'll just take off sometimes in the car, and we'll just head in a direction we haven't gone, and decide kind of on the way. Maybe find something interesting. We like finding old abandoned barns and stuff like that, and just
Mhm.
different things that are around, and just seeing what's going on in our city. So we love doing
Mhm.
things like that. So I think it's all those things are things that connect us. The prayer
Yeah.
connects us with each other and God. The communication connects us. The Uversion plans connects us. The
Mhm.
time, the dates, the having fun together, all those things connect us. And so that's, I think, over the years has built us into the marriage that we have today. And we still do
Yeah.
those things. Again, you
Yeah.
don't just, because I see some people, they have really good marriages. They get to a point in life and they just kind of quit working on it, which I don't
Mhm.
get. But then you can
Mhm.
see them. You're just like a couple that you used to see for dinner at the restaurant, and they were just engaging the whole time. And
Mhm.
now they're picking their fun up. They're not talking to each other, and that's
Mhm.
another thing. When you're together, put your phones down, put them out of
Yeah.
reach,
Yeah.
because we're all so used to hearing something on that phone and picking it up. So
Mhm.
for me, it's got to be out of reach. It's got to be like,
Mhm.
yeah, and silenced. And so
Yeah.
it's okay to do that.
Yes. Do not disturb is my friend.
Yes,
Use that setting all
exactly.
the time. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I feel like you gave us so many great rhythms and habits. I mean, that's just a lot of really helpful stuff. I feel like just the simple stuff, finding time to daily talk together, and then
Yeah.
we've got like the daily, the weekly, and then adding in your fun and all that stuff. That's really going to work together for a really strong connection.
And again, all these things are easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like, oh, mom, it's a burden. No, and as you see your marriage grow, it should
Mhm.
encourage, hopefully encourages you to keep
Yeah.
doing these and to add some
Mhm.
things to it. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I will mention one habit and rhythm that we have created and stood by in our marriage that's really helped is just the rhythm of seasonally evaluating like our busyness level before we commit to things.
That's
With
good.
having 4 kids, there's always a pressure to have them all doing more things. They want to do a lot,
Yep.
and that's great. And so as parents, I feel like it's really difficult sometimes to weigh out the decision of what do we think is worth the time, what's not worth the time. And so we just kind of set some parameters around for our family, what will work, what won't work, what can we just not commit to, what can we not sustain. And we made some tough calls early on about what we could and couldn't fit in just because we knew we would burn ourselves out, and that would be terrible for our marriage, for our
Oh,
children,
yeah.
for our careers, our callings, all these things would suffer. And so that was a decision we had to make and guard, even though it was odd. People thought it was too strict or strange or all these things. But at the same time, we knew that we would suffer if we didn't put down some boundaries around that. So that's something we've evaluated from season to season, making sure we know what
Mhm.
we're committing to when we commit to things. We don't sign up for things that are open ended, because we've made that mistake too. Sign up for something that kind of spiraled and ended up
Yeah.
requiring a lot more of us than we expected. And so the habit and the rhythm of evaluating before committing has been really beneficial for our marriage.
Oh, that's so good. I think that's really good. I think we all can benefit from thinking that through. And I get it. It is hard to tell your kids no because
Mhm.
they're going to tell you everybody in the world is doing this but me, mom.
Right.
They're going to have all,
Yeah.
and that's okay. They just want their way, and so
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
they're figuring out how to
Right.
negotiate and try to figure this out.
Yes.
But I think you've got to keep that big picture. We tried to kind of paint a picture of what we wanted our marriage to look like, our family to look like, and the things that we wanted to instill in our kids before they left. So it kind of had that template that we laid things over.
Mhm.
One of the things that we did love was that having their friends come to our house because
Mhm.
we enjoyed doing things together for the friends. And I think
Yeah.
we connected that because we'd talk about that. So that was a one way that we were able to kind of let the kids do things, but
Mhm.
all the kids liked to come up to our house, which was great.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So that
That's
was
really
fun.
cool.
That was fun too.
Yeah, that's so good. And I feel like too, it's tough. It's been tough because sometimes they're really good things we're saying no to. It's not bad
Yes.
stuff. It's not like the kids want to go out and on a crime spree. They want to do good stuff. We just can't fit it all
Right.
in.
Right.
So,
Right.
so just to be encouraged that sometimes we do have to sacrifice good things for what's really most important. But I love what you and Nancy cultivated there too. That's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's true. You want to, I think my pastor said at one time, you're not doing bad things, like you said.
Yeah.
You're doing good things, but what's the best thing?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
best thing is always going to be family, relationship,
Mhm.
marriage. And so the
Mhm.
good things, just like the bad things, can get in the way of that. And sometimes we
Mhm.
don't think about that. Or, I think
Mhm.
people, and we've talked about this a little bit in ministry, think they have to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And 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 I think that's where you see a lot of pastors or people in ministry burn out because you can't. Jesus, I always go back to Jesus didn't heal everybody on earth. He
Mm-mm.
went away. He had time by
Mhm.
himself.
Mhm.
And so he set a great example for us that it's okay to say no.
Yes. Yeah, he made the disciples leave,
Yeah.
the ministry field and go rest.
Yeah.
He just yeah, that's good. And I think for us, if I'm being honest, that's where a lot of our hard decisions came from was from ministry context where you have the option to try and help everyone all the time. But we're
Yes.
not Jesus. We can't do that.
One thing I heard somebody suggesting, he was a pastor and he'd get all kinds of invitations, go to lunch and stuff. So he just decided Tuesday's going to be my lunch day. So when somebody for
Mhm.
lunch, he said, I would love to go to lunch with you. I
Mhm.
do that on Tuesdays.
Mhm.
This is the first date I've got open. I would love to see you then. So he's
Mhm.
not saying no. He's just
Yeah.
putting some boundaries and parameters around that. And
Mhm.
it's okay to do that.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And one more thing that I thought of as you were speaking, talking about family and marriage being first, I think one really tricky thing I've seen a lot lately is that family means a lot of different things. A lot of times we think of our in laws, our families of origin, and all the expectations they put on us, which is not what you're saying here, is it?
No, no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about your core family, your nuclear
Mm-hmm.
family, you and your
Mm-hmm.
spouse and your kids,
Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes extended family can be as big a problem as other things too.
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
put it just is. You just got to learn to set boundaries with
Mm-hmm.
people so that you can accomplish the things that are really important
Mm-hmm.
for you
Mm-hmm.
and your marriage.
Yes. And when you talk about a hard no, that is a hard no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It is. It is because
Mm-hmm.
somebody's not going to understand. I always
Mm-hmm.
talk to couples in premarital counseling. I said, "What are you going to do at Christmas?" And they go,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, well, my parent." Oh, and they realized then. I said, "Okay, you figure out what you guys want to do,
Mhm.
and then you tell your family in September. Don't wait till
Mhm.
December 15th to say we're
Right.
changing. Not going to be here, not going to be there, and keep that up.
Yeah.
Just know that your family is more important, and you send that message. And it's not to be cruel. It's to like, okay, we have our own unit, and
Yes.
we want to do what." we feel is best for our unit. We
Mhm.
want to love our extended family. We want to spend time with you, but sometimes we're going to say no, and that's
Mhm.
okay.
Yes. And that's you have to look at what is the decision that's going to serve the health and longevity of the marriage.
Yes.
It's sometimes you have to make decisions with that long-term view in mind, and that can be really hard, but really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, that was a lot of tough stuff in there, but that's some real stuff. So, any other habits that you see really helping couples as they're being intentional and trying to do sort of a reset and be building good habits for their marriage?
One we haven't talked about is empathy, which I just
Mm.
stress that more and more because I see, and I think a lot of it comes out of our culture now that's so divided. We just don't have
Mhm.
time to, I mean, if someone's a different political party than me, I don't have empathy for them because,
Mhm.
well, I mean, they're wrong. No, instead of knowing that there is value in every person. So take that
Yeah.
into your marriage, put yourself in your spouse's shoes. What's it like? What's their perspective on things? That I think makes a huge difference. And it
Mhm.
helps you. One is being more of a student of your spouse, which we talk about a lot to
Mhm.
do. And two, I think it's gonna connect you. Keeping short accounts,
Mhm.
so that's one of the things you can build into your weekly checkup. Hey, is there anything from the past week that needs to be resolved that we didn't resolve? And so you're not letting it go for months. You're letting it go maybe a few days at the most. And then, but build that into your weekly checkup. Talk
Mhm.
about that. And I think continue to work on your sexual relationship. It's
Mhm.
it's such a gift. Keep it fresh. Just talk about it. Talk about, okay, at this stage of life, where are we? What do we want our frequency to be? What
Mhm.
is most meaningful for us? What do we both enjoy the most in this relationship to
Mhm.
keep that moving on so you don't lapse? And I see couples that come in and they haven't been together sexually in months.
Mm.
And not that that's the cure all, it's not. It's usually the kind of the
Right.
icing on the cake when communication's good and everything else.
Mhm.
But you're missing out on that connection that God built in there in the
Mhm.
sexual relationship. Um, so those would be the main things. And then maybe always everything you go through is our marriage winning in this?
Mm. Mhm.
And keeping that mindset of it's not Nancy winning or me winning, our marriage has to win. Because if
Mhm.
Nancy wins, then how do I feel? Oh, I'm a loser in that.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
win, she's the loser. And in
Mhm.
either one of those, the marriage loses.
Yeah.
So what's the win for your marriage? And I think when we learn to put that out there, it made it easier to compromise. I think
Mhm.
we began listening better to each other and resolve conflict better. So yeah, I think it makes a big difference.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, because then you're gonna eliminate a lot of conflict before it even starts, because
Yes.
it doesn't
Oh,
have to be.
so I tell couples all the time. If you communicate well and listen well to each other, your conflict will go down
Mhm.
because you both feel understood, and maybe
Mhm.
even little things that irritate just don't become important anymore.
Yes.
So yeah, it makes such a difference.
That's huge. So what about on the other side? What are some things that couples need to not do during this process?
You know what I've seen kind of pop up again now is keeping score.
Mm. Mhm.
Like, well, you did this, you did that, stuff like that.
Mhm.
I think that don't bring up the past. I mean, when you resolve an issue, you got
Mhm.
to move on and you got to leave that issue behind. And I've seen people that's, yeah, it was resolved, but he did that. Don't you see that
Yeah.
he did that? So that's why I'm bringing it up now. Can't
Mhm.
do that
Mhm.
because it's going to frustrate your spouse. They're going to think all that work we did, and now you're
Mhm.
still bringing that up because you're using it then as a weapon, not
Mm.
as something to bring up that we need to resolve.
Right.
Be patient with the process. I think that sometimes we get impatient.
Mhm.
Okay, I went to counseling once and it didn't work. Well, it
Mhm.
probably is not going to work if you just go one time.
Right.
Go enough till you feel like you get a handle on, and your counselor says, "Hey, you guys go work on this, then come back in a month,"
Mhm.
or things like that. Don't compare your marriage to other people. I think I see
Mhm.
that a lot, especially with social media. We know that,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
so don't do that. They have their own
Mhm.
marriage, and I'll guarantee you, there's not anybody that looks perfect on social media that doesn't have problems.
Yeah.
Everybody does. That's why I
Mhm.
always think there should be a social media that, like real social media, that we just really show us
Yeah.
what kind of we show you yelling at your kids, or
Right.
are you slamming the cabinet door when your husband said something? I mean, let's
Yeah.
get real, but that
Yeah.
probably wouldn't work. And then I think the last thing I'd say not to do is make sure you take divorce off the table and never put it
Mhm.
back on,
Mhm.
because that when you make that commitment, it makes you hang in there, makes you work through things you might not. And so that's really important too.
Yeah. That's great. That's a really helpful list. Really helpful. Yeah. Well, Dr. Kim, that we've covered a lot of ground in this episode. A lot of things that were really going to help a marriage. The signs to tell you need to work on them, and then things not to do. Do you have any final piece of advice for our listeners today?
I would just encourage you to take a step. We did cover a lot. If you see something in there, like I said at the beginning, I think it's good to have everybody have a reset.
Mm-hmm.
It would
Mm-hmm.
be like, hopefully this year when Nancy and I do that, it's going to be looking back, it's going to planning forward, it's what do we want to
Mm-hmm.
focus on, that we have done pretty good in most of these areas. Maybe there's one, maybe we feel like, we really have, well, maybe we're not doing as much together,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, so let's build a little more of that into it. But do that, talk about things together. If there's some real issues, get help, do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just start off this new year with a lot of hope of
Yeah.
what God can do in your marriage. And you take your steps and God's going to walk with you.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So, if you're looking for a place to start today, if you want to get started on this, we have a lot of great resource at awesomemarriage.com. And in particular, our resource of the month, this month, we have a new one every month. This month, we have a healthy marriage rhythms bundle. We have a lot of incredible resources here. If you want to start doing this weekly check in, Kim is talking about, we have a weekly marriage check in guide. It is newly redesigned for the new year, an annual marriage check in guide. We have 78 date night ideas, 30 fill in the blank love note prompts, and 21 prayers for building an awesome marriage. These are all bundled together for one donation right now. So if you're really wanting to get serious about building some rhythms, start with this. You can keep using this all year long to grow your marriage. And if you do want to take one of our Awesome Marriage University courses, again, we're running a flash sale right now, $100 off any of the courses at awesomemarriage.com. We've got communication, conflict, better sex life. What else do we have? We have so many topics. We've got
We've
so
got
many things covered.
porn. We've got,
Yep.
marriages, that marriage 911.
Yep.
If you're struggling, that'll help you work through some areas.
Boundaries
Yeah, we've got
course.
so
Yep.
much of,
Lots of
yes,
good stuff.
boundaries. Yes.
So make sure you check out those resources. And if you want just an easy freebie for your marriage, sign up for Dr. Kim's Marriage Multiplier. That is probably the easiest place to start because it's just a really bite-sized, tangible, quick email each week with 4 things you can do. So make sure you're doing something awesome for your marriage today. Have a great day. Do something awesome for your marriage today, and we'll see you next time.